A number of well-known physicists have recently put forward the hypothesis that there are zones on Earth known as temporal fractures. In such anomalous places, the past and the future sometimes converge with each other. During this process, there is a transfer of information and energy, which can also capture material bodies, people, animals, airplanes. There is a hypothesis that during temporal disruptions in the structure of space and time, special tunnels are formed, connecting different eras. Some researchers believe that involuntary time travelers only briefly find themselves in the past or the future and then are transported back to their own time. However, there are reasons to believe that this is not always the case. The most unfortunate scenario is quite possible: to be stuck in a foreign time forever. Travelers from the past to the future in such a case are most likely to face the unenviable fate of a psychiatric clinic patient. Those who end up from the future to the past with a certain level of composure and resourcefulness might manage to settle in more or less. Perhaps it was just such an involuntary time traveler who constructed the famous Baghdad battery, which produced electricity 4,000 years ago. Currently, no one has been able to prove that time travel is real, but likewise, no one has been able to prove the opposite. At the same time, throughout the history of humanity, there has been accumulated a huge amount of evidence that suggests time travel is indeed real. And to not be unfounded, I will give you a few examples of such travels. Novosibirsk, a spring, morning, in 2012. A strange young man entered the Central Police Department. The man looked around with an astonished expression and introduced himself as an employee of this district department, but the police officers had never seen him before. But the most interesting thing was that this person was dressed in a police uniform from the Soviet era. On the epaulettes of his tunic, the emblems of the Soviet Union were displayed. To the sergeant at the entrance, he presented an official ID in the name of Lieutenant Smirnov, issued in 1975. He called the duty officer. The lieutenant was taken to an office to verify his identity. The strange policeman initially took everything as some kind of absurd prank. He stared wildly at the electric kettle and couldn't take his eyes off the police officer's mobile phones. The lieutenant insisted that it was currently the year 1980. The news that Brezhnev had long been dead greatly upset him. According to the lieutenant, that morning he, as usual, left his house and headed to his duty at the district police department. There was a thick fog on the street, and for some reason there were no passers-by at all. Upon approaching the police station, he was quite surprised by the sight of the suddenly renovated building. He was puzzled by the strange people in police uniforms, with inscriptions on their chests and backs. Police who, just like in foreign movies, in communication with the strange policeman, the police officers were struck by his excellent knowledge of the entire district department building, as if he had really worked there for many years. A few hours later, FSB officers arrived at the police station in Novosibirsk, took the stranger, and drove away with him. No one saw this strange policeman again, but the most surprising thing was that just later, the police discovered that the strange Lieutenant Smirnov had indeed worked in their department in 1970s. In the spring of 1980, he left home for work and went missing. In the 1950s, an astonishing case became public through the press. A man dressed in 19th century clothing suddenly found himself amidst the traffic on a busy New York street and was run over by one of the cars. The driver swore that the deceased suddenly appeared in front of his car as if he had fallen from the sky. There was simply no way to break in time. In an attempt to identify the deceased, the police searched his pockets and found an identification document issued 80 years ago. It turned out that the man was a traveling salesman and lived on a street that was demolished 50 years ago. This story intrigued the police so much that they took the trouble to dig into the archives and find the lists of residents from the area mentioned in the document, dating back to the late 19th century. There, they discovered the mysterious traveling salesman. Further searches led to an unexpected encounter. An elderly woman with the same last name as the deceased told the detectives that 70 years ago, her father disappeared under very mysterious circumstances. He went outside to get some fresh air before bed and seemed to vanish into thin air. All attempts to find him led to nothing. After rummaging through a box of photographs, the woman found photographs of her father. The police were astonished when they saw the very same unfortunate man in the old photograph, a traveling salesman who was hit by a car. A very strange story occurred in the 1990s. One of the Hong Kong newspapers told the world an astonishing story about a boy named Yun Li Chen. In 1987, doctors from one of Hong Kong's psychiatric clinics approached scientists. The police brought a very strange boy to their clinic who claimed he had come from the past. The doctors found no brain damage and concluded that he was completely healthy. However, the boy's unusual stories puzzled them and made them doubt his mental health. The scientists became interested in the doctor's story and visited the boy. First of all, they were struck by his clothing, which was clearly made from hand-woven fabric. It resembled exhibits from museums found in ancient burials. Yun Li Chen spoke fluently in one of the ancient Chinese dialects, and he told historians such details about the distant past that it truly shocked them. They decided to verify the boy's story using temple books. In some of them, which were several centuries old, historian In Xiao unexpectedly found the names of places and even the names of people mentioned by the strange boy. The astonished scholar decided to seriously investigate this remarkable case, but he was met with bitter disappointment. Yun unexpectedly disappeared. He seemed to have vanished from the closed chamber located in the center of the temple under constant surveillance. The disappointed historian turned again to the ancient chronicles and suddenly discovered a mention of Yun's treatment. It was reported that Chen had been missing for over 10 years, but then returned without having aged at all and began to tell stories of having been to a distant future where he saw flying iron birds, carriages moving without horses, and houses with roofs reaching into the clouds. Of course, no one believed the boy. He was considered crazy. And 3 weeks after his return, he unexpectedly died. An extremely mysterious incident occurred in 1992 at the Caracas airport in Venezuela. The publication WW News reported on a mysterious DC-4 airplane that attempted to land at the Caracas airport. Airport employees saw this plane because it did not appear on the radar. The dispatchers managed to contact the pilot of the plane. With a surprised and even frightened voice, the pilot reported that he was operating charter flight 9 Twin from New York to Miami with 54 passengers on board. They were supposed to land on the morning of June 2nd, 1955. In the end, he asked, "Where are we?" The dispatchers, stunned by the pilot's message, replied that he was over the airport in Caracas and gave permission to land. The pilot did not respond, but during the landing, everyone heard his surprised exclamation, "Jimmy, what the heck is that?" The American pilot's surprise was apparently caused by a jet fighter taking off at that time. The mysterious plane landed safely. Its pilot was breathing heavily. Finally, he said, "Something is not right here." When he was informed that he had landed on May 24, 1992, the pilot exclaimed, "Oh my God." They tried to calm him down by saying that a ground crew was already on its way to him. However, upon seeing airport staff near the plane, the pilot shouted, "Do not come near us, we are leaving from here." The ground crew staff saw the astonished faces of the passengers in the windows, and the DC-4 pilot slightly opened the glass in his cockpit and waved at them, with some magazine demanding that they not approach the plane. He started the engines, the plane took off and disappeared. Did he manage to reach his time? Unfortunately, the further fate of the crew and passengers of the plane is unknown, as the publication did not report any investigation of this case. As evidence of this unusual incident at the Caracas airport, there remain recordings of the communications with the DC-4 and the calendar from 1955, which fell out of the magazine the pilot was waving.